And actually, I will go on by introducing Michał Wisniewski, who is our guest from Krakow. We are very honored to have Michał here. Dr. Michał Wisniewski is architecture historian, lecturer at the University of Economics in Krakow, and head of education department at the International Center ICC. And now currently he's a co-curator of the exhibition Soc-Modernism, Architecture in Central Europe during the Cold War, which you can see, and I hope Michał will tell us more, in the ICC in Krakow. So welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. 10 minutes, I remember. In Poland we also had many films about housing, many comedies, but maybe not many in Krakow were being produced. However, I have to say that Krakow was a stage for one very important movie. Cannes Festival presented Lenin in Poland, 1960s super production of the Soviet Union. Lenin spent 2 years in Poland of his life, very important years. Unfortunately, in 1914, Austrian police allowed him to go out, and we are in problems until today. But what is important for my presentation is that I'm going to talk about the city that was very strongly connected to Lenin. I'm going to talk about Nowa Huta. Next slide, please. And especially about one part of Nowa Huta named Mistrezejovice. Very difficult name. That's the plan of the city of Krakow of 1957-51. It was developed later on until 1957-58. What I want to say is that until World War II, the city of Krakow was still circulating in its development very closely to the main city center, just in the middle. Until the World War II, it was just next to it almost. But right after the war, it saw the major extension, and to the right you can see the new center built for the sake of Nowa Huta. The next slide, please. The project was launched in 1949. The project of development of the largest steel factory, Vladimir Lenin steel factory, largest one in Poland. Initially, it was supposed to produce 1.5 millions of tons of raw steel yearly. At the end, in the 1970s, it was more than 6 millions, and at that time, it was among the biggest steel factories in Europe. Next slide, please. Today, Nowa Huta might be seen in one of the largest districts of the city of Krakow. The city is inhabited. Right after the war, it was 300,000 people. In the 1980s, it was 700,000 people. Right now, it is about 1 million. But what is important, Nowa Huta today might be seen as a kind of a open-air museum of various stages of development of cities in the post-war Poland or post-war Central Europe. It started in 1949. The same year, the doctrine of socialist realism was implemented to the Polish culture, to polish everything, including architecture and urban planning. Next slide, please. And as you can see, Nowa Huta is a genuine product of the era, following the early modern urban planning, developed in the 30s in Magnitogorsk and then reproduced in the eastern outskirts of Krakow as it was in the 50s. Next slide, please. This is the genuine product of the group of some 600 planners and architects working for Miasto Projekt Kraków. That was the name of the company. Now you will remember the exact number of those people. I will go to that later on. Anyway, it was one of the largest urban planning companies active in Poland at that time. In the 50s, they were producing this very type of architecture. And next slide, please. but after 1956 Khrushchev speech, the type of architecture and planning as well in Nowa Huta shifted quite dramatically. Next slide, please. It was not only about some particular buildings, but it was about the whole ensembles. And in this very one image, we can see the second part of Nowa Huta. Next slide, please. Bieńczyce, it is in the middle of this plan. Initially, Nowa Huta was designed for some 100,000 people, but later on, Bieńczyce was for the, next slide please, for the 50,000, and then Mistrezejovice, the third part of Nowa Huta, was for another 50,000, then Czyżyny for another 50,000. Each blast furnace of the company meant about 40,000-50,000 people more. And there were 6 of those blast furnaces in the 1970s. Already in 1957, the first housing building was produced in Nowa Huta, planner building, sorry. It was the French technology. Poland was trying to establish some connection to France at that time, buying this technology. However, I should say that the panel blocks were started to be produced in Nowa Huta much later, in the late 60s. Some architects from Krakow and from Poland were able to travel to France in 1956, to Sweden, some even to the United States. It might be sound strange, but for Poles there was a very short, but anyway, window of opportunity to meet with Americans. And next slide, please. This is the, let's say, third stage of development of Nowa Huta, namely Mistrezejovice. Once Bieńczyce's construction was implemented with those huge units, it was not found positively by some of the urban planners, and in Mistrezejovice, designed mainly by Witold Cęckiewicz, the idea was to shift into a smaller scale building, much better connected to the landscape. Next slide, please. In 1957, the author of the project was allowed to travel to West Berlin to see Hansa Wirtel and to see the exhibition, Interbau exhibition. And I'm presenting here this part of the Corbusier House of Berlin with this shape of the tree. Author of the Mistrezejovice plan was somehow approaching this idea of the tree. 4 different branches of the tree meant 10 to 15,000 people housing a state each. And in general, it was 4 seasons district in the beginning. That was the plan of the name. The spring estate, summer estate, autumn estate, and winter estate. And next slide, please. And this is the summer estate. Finally, the name of the house is much more patriotic, let's say, Złotego Wieku, Golden Era estate. I don't have time to develop it, but what I want to say is that in this very project, the authors were able to develop some different types of housing. However, they were working partly with panels and partly with the so-called technology of big block, something like the huge cement bricks. It was still just before the full prefabrication, but anyway, they decided to put those long constructions in the bottom of the valley, then the smaller ones uphill, and on the top the tallest buildings. Next slide, please. Mistrezejovice was some kind of a challenging project, proposing some new types of housings, later on being developed in the various places of the city of Krakow, which was quite unusual comparing to the previous years. The casual, let's say, size of the one housing unit was about 55 square meters, so relatively a lot, like for the conditions of 1960s and 1970s Poland. The construction of Mistrezejovice was launched in 1967 and was continued for about 15 years. Next slide, please. The place was seen as a political visit card. Already Nowa Huta was being visited in 1954 by Khrushchev, by Nehru, and later on by many politicians. In 1972, Mistrezejovice was visited by Fidel Castro, and in 1983 by John Paul II, who opened one of the churches there. It was probably the biggest public event ever held in this part of Krakow. Some 200,000 people in the middle of this housing estate. And my time is almost consumed, but I still have 17 seconds. So next slide, please. It will be the last one. Today, Mistrezejovice are a topic of many interventions. The property structure is based mainly on the private and semi-private tools. It is quite well managed, I have to say, and within last 15 years it saw many programs for redevelopment of the housing. The social structure is slowly growing, but it is still relatively, let's say, in the middle of the structure of the entire city. And in the recent years, it played a very important role in receiving a large number of refugees coming from mainly from Ukraine. This year, with some of the colleagues that are in the room, we launched a project called We Care. It is about research dedicated to post-war housing in various parts of Europe, and Mistrezejovice are among the topics. Last slide, please. So, thank you so much, and I hope that one day we will meet in Mistrezejovice. Thank you.